Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here, joined by fellow Lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, and of course, we are here with your weekly preview, and this one is a doozy. Texas versus Georgia, a top 5 matchup, and of course, this preview brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Of course, our friends over at MyBookie offering you great deals these days. Make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Play any matchup, hundreds of college player props and more. We'll give you some more details about mybookie.ag in just a second. But CJ, how you feeling about this matchup, top 5 matchup for the Longhorns, one of the biggest home games for Texas in the history of the program? You've talked about how big of a recruiting weekend it is, but there's no doubt about it. It's statement time for the Longhorns, their biggest test so far, offensively and defensively, in my opinion.
Yeah, without a question, and Texas played some solid defenses so far, right? Michigan, solid defense. Oklahoma, solid defense. But offensively, you've not seen a quarterback with the capabilities and the talent as a Carson Beck this year. You've not seen an offensive line as talented as this Georgia offensive line either. So it's going to be a great test for this Texas defense. Of course, sitting number 1 in the country right now, Rod, in points per game allowed. They've been tremendous at not allowing the big play, but they're going to be tested. And this is going to be the best offense, the best team that Texas has played this year. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. So we'll see if that sound communication that's been such a strength shows up again for the Longhorns on Saturday, because, of course, there's a lot that goes into what's going to decide this game. And I think some of the numbers are going to favor the Longhorns here. But, of course, it starts with that defense and whether or not they can force Georgia to go down the field instead of racking up chunk plays.
Yeah, if I told you before the season started that the number 1 defense in the country will be on display in that Texas-Georgia game, you'd have assumed it was Georgia. Nope, it is the Longhorns right now that have that accreditation, if you will, of the number 1 defense in the country. Before we get into it and dive deep, we'll start with that Georgia defense versus that Texas offense. Let's thank our good friends over at MyBookie. MyBookie, with all the excitement of this season, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag and use the promo code ONTexas to get started. It's MyBookie's 10-year anniversary, so they're rolling out the red carpet for bettors everywhere. Bet big and bet confidently with risk-free Thursdays. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you'll get your money back weekly. No sweat, win-win bets all season long. And sign up right now. Use the code ONTexas to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Double the cash in your account before you even place your first bet with MyBookie. Bet right now, folks. You don't want to wait long, because if you wait too long, it's only for a limited time only, so you may miss your chance to win big over at MyBookie. For those of you who've been playing with MyBookie for years now, they've got something for you too, a brand new loyalty rewards program in MyBookie Plus. It's simple. All right, the more you play and the more chances you have to earn and progress through the tiers and unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash back in your account. That's mybookie.ag. Use the code ONTexas and MyBookie Plus. Thank you very much to them for sponsoring our weekly preview. All right, let's start with the offense for Texas, defense for Georgia. I mean, you're talking about 2 of, if not the most respected and 2 of the best minds in their phases of the game. Sark's known as a brilliant offensive mind. Kirby Smart, one of the most respected and brilliant defensive minds. This is going to be, I think, the matchup that determines the game pretty much. What are your thoughts? What are you looking for X factors between these 2 phases for Georgia and for Texas?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You think Georgia, you think defense, you think suffocating defense. And for the last 4 years or so, that's been the case, right? They've had top 10 defenses, points per game wise in the last 3 seasons, right? It went 1, 5, 7 the last 3 years. It's pretty darn good. This year, it's not that. And I don't think it's remotely close to what we've seen over the last 3 years. They're still good. They're still not allowing a whole lot of points. You look at 12 points allowed to Kentucky. You look at 13 to Auburn. You look at 3 to Tennessee Tech. But then you also look at 40 to Alabama. You also look at 31 to Mississippi State. And you say, okay, hold on. What's the reasoning for this? And there's a few in my eyes. It's not just one thing, but it's an accumulation, right? Here's some of the numbers of where they stand nationally in some defensive categories. They're 39th in pass defense. They're 44th in run defense. Rod, they're 80th in red zone defense. And here's the big kicker. They don't create takeaways, and they're not good in creating negative plays. And that's crazy for a Georgia defense, but You're sitting here 110th in the country 7 weeks into the season in takeaways. This isn't the Kirby Smart defense that we've seen suffocate really good opposing offenses so far. And that's not to say that they're bad, but so far it's not shown up. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, they don't create negative plays. And that was the one thing through the first 4 games that Texas fans were like, hold on, where's the sacks? Where's the pressures? Where's, the tackle for losses? Last 2 weeks, Texas has 11 sacks against Mississippi State and Oklahoma State. They're going to need that, obviously, this week against Georgia. But listen, they're 52nd in the country in tackles for loss this year. They're 79th in sacks. It's a good defense. It's not an elite defense that we've seen from Georgia. And as a result, with the way that this Texas offensive line is played, specifically on the edges with Cam Williams and Kelvin Banks, I'm expecting Quinn Ewers to have some time. With Smail Mondon not playing, the star middle linebacker for Georgia as well, that middle of the field should be open, or at least you don't see that middle linebacker blitz as we've seen on the Texas side with Anthony Hill, Leon Glafau, David Benda. So right now, I think this side of the ball favors the Texas offense pretty heavily.
Yeah, and to your point about them not being able to manufacture negative plays, create negative plays, and you're around the money, that stood out to me too. They don't really have an identity defensively. They're still a good defense. It's Kirby Smart. This is calling card, but an identity. Oklahoma's a defense had an identity, opportunistic. They made splash plays. They made havoc plays. That's what they did. Michigan's defense, it had an identity, if you will. Is mostly that defensive front, right? The defensive line.
7, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that's the tackle duo in college football. That was their identity. Your identity is built on what you're good at. I'm not sure what, really what Georgia's defense is really good at. I guess maybe their run defense is maybe what they're hanging their hat on, because pass defense wise, you look at pass efficiency defense. I mean, they're around 65th in the country in like pass efficiency defense. You brought the pass defense numbers. So yeah, I think that's the thing. What do they hang their hat on? And I don't know if this year they found anything necessarily to hang their hat on as a defense. And as it going up against them, that means you have nothing to really to fear. Even Oklahoma, you fear, don't make the big mistake, because Oklahoma will make you pay. They certainly will. You better make sure you're dialed up in pass protection, buttoned up, or they'll make you pay because they create a lot of negative plays. And one thing I agree with you on, this group does not really have an identity. And so it's still a good defense, but I feel better about Texas' chances against this particular Georgia defense than in years past. Because not only they suffocate you, but they had an identity that they could really impose on you.
Who are the game breakers for Georgia defensively, right? We've seen it in years past. You've had some really talented guys. You could look at Malachi Starks. You could look at, some of the guys that they're continuing to throw out. Right now, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is a guy that he leads the team in sacks with 3. He has 13 pressures through 6 games. And you do the math there. He's averaging a sack every 2 games and 2 pressures per game. And you think, okay, that's not necessarily as terrifying as you would have anticipated the leading Georgia edge rusher to have through 6 games, excuse me. So that it's interesting, right? And again, I mentioned Smail Mondon not expected to play, but they've got talent there. And I'm not trying to dismiss it. I'm just trying to wonder, where is it? Where is their calling card? To your point, I don't know what their overall strength is going to be. It could be just sound football. It could just be bend but don't break, because again, if you're right outside the top 20 in points per game, you're doing something right. But I'm not seeing a strength that I haven't seen already in a Oklahoma or a Michigan so far this year.
Yep, totally agree with you about that. And I wonder, just trying to just psychoanalyze how Kirby Smart's going to approach it. I think their rush defense is going to be their strength. The question is, can Texas run on Georgia? Or will Texas be mostly a one-dimensional team? Yeah. And will Texas come out like they have been most of the games this season and lean on early down pass rates to start the game and let the passing game open up the run? But in the Oklahoma game, it was a little bit different because Quinn was off. And so they went with a more balanced approach early on in terms of the pass rate. And then we know they leaned on the running game to win that game. I do wonder, because of the rush defense for Georgia, if Texas, what concepts are going to work versus Kentucky ran for 177 yards on Georgia. They did it with a lot of interior run schemes. They did inside zone, a lot of duo thrown in there as well. So it was interior runs. Texas likes that wide zone, that outside zone. I wonder in that chess match in terms of Texas run game, how effective will he be versus Georgia, and what concepts are going to work versus Georgia. In that Oklahoma game, Texas got to the edge on that split wide zone versus Georgia. The only thing they've really shown vulnerability to is the inside run game against Kentucky, and Kentucky was able to do that. Can Texas play that kind of physical game where they can have those inside interior runs against Georgia, or are you going to try to get to the edge on them as well?
Yeah, that's one of the things. Do you trust your speed to beat their speed? And I think the strength defensively for Texas is they're going to take their speed defensively all day versus who they play. And we've seen that with Alana Lafau, David Benda, Anthony Hill. That's been a calling card for them. Right now, again, teams have had success against Nazir Stackhouse, Jamal Jarrett. I mean, you look at Miller and Brenson, I believe, are the two others on the interior. There's been, running lanes. Auburn ran for 130. Kentucky 170. We saw the big explosive plays from a lack of pressure from Alabama. It gives you some question marks to say, okay, they're good. I know they got guys back there, but it's not just stacking up right now for whatever reason defensively for Georgia. I'm expecting Texas to be able to move the football. Of course, this is a game for Quinn Ewers. He has to start better than what he did against Oklahoma. I don't think anybody's going to question that, but the quick 3-and-outs against a team like Carson Beck and a quarterback like Carson Beck and a team like Georgia, you can't give them more opportunities without flipping field position there. And against that Texas defense, short fields are going to kill you because they're tremendous at making teams go the entire length. Teams haven't done it this year, and they probably won't do it this year after this game, looking at who Texas has the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, if you're Texas, I expect them honestly to come in and do what they have done most of the time, and that's lean on the passing game. So I think they're going to try to make this game a track meet. I don't think Texas is afraid of anybody when it comes to matching up their speed versus their speed. So I think you'll make it a track meet early. Don't be surprised you see a lot of targets to motion. That's something that they struggled with. Matter of fact, against Mississippi State had a lot of targets to motion. Matter of fact, that was like a 70-yard bomb they had that was on a player targeting motion. That's a conceptual signature in Sark's offense, something that Georgia may be vulnerable to. Empty formation, Bama absolutely killed that Georgia defense empty formation. Now, they did have a dual threat quarterback to pair up with it, but Texas has been really good in empty formation this season. Quinn was amazing out of empty versus Oklahoma. He was 100% completion percentage, even going back to last year, the last 3 games, really good out of empty. Also something else I expect to see, essentially concepts that are going to turn this thing into a track meet and stretch Georgia and force them to match up on the perimeter. So I think Texas can do that as well as anybody in the country. I guess question on offense, will you have Isaiah Bond? But even if you don't have Isaiah Bond or he's not fully healthy, at least you have the complement of the deepest wide receivers potentially in college football.
Absolutely.
And so even though other guys will step up, but I still say make it a track meet. The question is, will Jaden Blue or Trey Wisner get more touches in the run game versus Georgia? What are your thoughts?
In the run game, I think it's Trey Wisner. I think you have to go with the hot hand. He's averaging 8 yards per carry against 2 SEC quality opponents. That's something that I don't think you can just, throw to the side. Regardless of game plan, there's going to be moments for Jaden Blue. I think specifically in the passing game, areas where he doesn't necessarily need to think about where he's going. He can just get the ball and go. So that's going to be jet sweeps. That's going to be outside zone. That's going to be in the passing game. Rod, I actually like the concept that you brought up on the Tuesday live stream is they bring back that Texas route, right? He scored on that in the spring game. UGA's top linebacker in coverage not playing. There's going to be an opportunity there for a little juke route, a little jag, if you will, and get loose up the middle. I think that's something that Texas showed a little bit. That was the interception from Arch Manning earlier this year where it went off the hands of Blue. But
it was.
The difference between Quinn and Arch is, hey, I think that ball might be coming in a little softer. If that's caught, again, Blue with the ball in space. I don't know if there's anybody better in the country with his speed than what he's able to do there.
Yep. No, it's a good point. I agree with you 100% there. Yeah, I think Tex, I agree with you about Trey Wisner too. I think Trey Wisner may be your guy compatible for certain run elements in the run game, but Jaden Blue is a weapon. You just cannot discard. So you got to make sure you scheme up some touches for him too. All right, let's jump to the other side of the ball. Texas defense, the best defense in the country statistically versus that Georgia offense. To me, I think the big storyline is Texas hasn't faced a quarterback of this ilk yet, a high-level quarterback, one that first-round caliber quarterback, a guy that really can maneuver in the pocket, manipulate defenders with his eyes as well, and make accurate throws from off-platform angles and outside the pocket. This is the test. This is a true test for this Texas defense, because they also have high caliber athletes on the outside. They're not an elite passing game by any stretch of the imagination, but they do have the weapons and they do have the high caliber athletes to make you pay. This is the best quarterback that Kirby Smart has had, and you can see it when you watch him. They rely on him, maybe a little too overly reliant on him with this specific Georgia team.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what got them in trouble against Alabama, is just forcing Carson Beck to find a way to make a play. And that, in a way, it forced him to make errant throws. It forced him to go into situations where it was very obvious a passing situation. Georgia's really good against zone coverages. And I think you look at the intermediate phases and say, okay, these wide receivers understand where to slow down their route, where to look around and find out if they're in space or not, and kind of just settle, right? That's a big part with tight end specifically, and Oscar Delp's a really good tight end, of when you're in that first level of a defense, do you know where to go? Do you know how to turn when you're looking back to the quarterback for the ball? That's going to be something I think that's very important, because I struggle with Georgia evaluating them. Other than Arian Smith right now, Rod, who's the guy that scares you deep? I don't know. Like we talk about it with Texas. We've seen DeAndre Moore go yard. We've seen Ryan Wingo several times go deep. Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, even Jonte Cook's gotten loose behind a secondary. You don't see it a whole lot with Georgia. I think you see that intermediate phase and stage of the passing game really start to stand out, and that's what Dominic Levet, that's Dylan Bell. These guys, they're averaging about 12 yards collectively per catch. That's a little different than Arian Smith, who's about 18 yards per reception. The one guy that I think you need to keep an eye on if he sees the field, and he's seeing it more and more against Alabama, Mississippi State over the last 2 weeks for Georgia, is Anthony Evans. And that's a guy with 10-3 speed out of Judson down in the San Antonio area. He can go. Now, do they trust him to be on the field and make a play against Texas? We'll see. But unless Georgia shows me something where they just start hucking it deep, I really like this Texas defense to make them earn every yard that they get. And if that's the case, we've seen 5 interceptions from Carson Beck over the last 3 weeks. He's turnover prone, to say the least.
He is, but I'll say this, because I was a little surprised when I went and looked up the numbers. If you're looking up 20-plus yard pass plays on the season, Georgia's top 5.
Yeah,
they're top 5 in the country in 20-plus yard pass plays. They're top 5 in 30-plus yard pass plays on the season. Ole Miss is number 1, Coastal Carolina number 2, and Georgia's number 3. Georgia's chunking it down. I'll give you another stat about Carson Beck and how comfortable he is throwing the football downfield. If you're looking at 20-plus yard passes, he's got more touchdowns on 20-plus yard throws than any level of the field. Got more touchdowns on 20-plus yard throws. He's got on 10 to 20-yard throws, or from 0 to 10-yard throws. He's got fewer interceptions on 20-plus yard throws, only 1, than he's got on 10 to 20-yard throws, or from 0 to 10-yard throws. Isn't that crazy? Only one of his interceptions comes on deep throws, and 6 touchdowns on deep throws. They're top 5 in the country on passes, completions of 20-plus yards. Now, it's not all bombs. Sometimes it's just him to the intermediate, and he's got getting yak opportunities. But Texas has not faced an offense that is as vertically exotic as Georgia is, because they will do double moves and they'll just buy time for the guys to get downfield. They're averaging close to 7 deep balls a game with Carson.
Well, when you're down 28-0 at halftime to Alabama, you got to find a way to come back. And of course,
Texas sees fewer than 3 deep balls a game, and nobody really. Davis Warren is the one that complete more deep balls on Texas than anybody else, and they were a vertically challenged offense. As a matter of fact, if you look at teams that have at least 20, the teams who have the most and the least amount of 20-plus yard pass plays, Oklahoma, Michigan, and ULM are at the bottom 5 of college football. You have faced literally the most vertically challenged offenses in the country. You just haven't seen it. So I believe the Texas defense can handle a team that wants to throw it vertically on them. They have not seen it, though. And they have not seen a quarterback of this ilk. They have not seen a wide receiver of this ilk. That's what kind of worries me a little bit. Little cause for concern, just because Texas hasn't seen it.
No, I agree. And to rebuttal that a little bit, because I do think a lot of that came against Mississippi State a week ago. Texas had their way with them after the first quarter, losing to Alabama. They had 4 touchdowns of 20-plus yards against Tennessee Tech week 1 alone. And that's kind of, again, you see where there's, a good side to the Georgia offense and a struggle side to the Georgia offense. Kentucky game was not pretty. The first half against Alabama was not pretty. The first half against Clemson's not pretty, which also, Rod, goes to the point that second half, for whatever reason, they come in and they really start putting it on you. So that's going to be a big key for the Texas defense as well, is whatever you see in that first half, if you're having success, you're probably not going to see that in the second half, and you're going to have to be dealing with somebody that's completely different and finding ways to force the ball down the field again, which, again, opens the door for some interceptions there.
Yeah, and they're not a good running team. There's also something different about this Georgia team. I think they're 67th in the country in yards per rush, somewhere around there. If you look at rushing yards a game, I mean, they're in the 90s. They're just not. So they are, I think, ultimately, they do rely on the passing game to lead the way for them, too, to get those, like you said, chunk yardage plays. If you force them to drive the length of the field, I don't know if they can do it with a balanced offense. If you take away the chunk yardage plays, I think that's going to be the name of the game. Can they take away the chunk yardage plays, and can they pressure Carson Beck organically? Because you don't want to blitz Carson Beck. His blitz numbers are amazing, actually. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country versus the blitz. So you really don't want to blitz him. Last week versus Oklahoma, Texas had their highest blitz rate of the season. As a young quarterback, this is a veteran quarterback. You don't really want to blitz him, but you want to get to him early and often. And I think some of those exotic pressure looks that we've seen from PK and Johnny Nansen, putting Colin Simmons in different places, Anthony Hill on the edge at times, I think that's going to be a big key in this game. How can you organically, creatively create pressure on Carson Beck before we can get to some of those chunk yardage plays down the field?
Yeah, this would be, if there's ever a time for Trey Moore to break out and really put his stamp on, hey, I'm here. I'm here at Texas. I'm ready to play. It would be in a game like this where not only do you have to worry about where Anthony Hill is, but Colin Simmons and Barron Sorrell, but then you start seeing 8 start floating around on that defensive line as well, because they've moved him from, standing up as a sniffer over the A gap to a B gap, blitzer, and then obviously outside as a 5 tech. But my goodness, if there was ever a time, this would be it, Rod. So a lot of opportunities for Texas to organically create. Now, the other thing is, will they? Because you look at it, Ernest Green, really talented. Xavier Truce, really talented. Their tackles right there with Texas is, you might be looking at the 2 best offensive lines in all of college football at the moment.
I know that's something to keep in mind, too. I saw Blake put out that ESPN mock draft that has Texas having 2 tackles. Kelvin Banks, of course, but also Tim Williams being drafted in the first round. Unbelievable. And you know what? It may come down to that. I saw that you brought up the fact that that Georgia has not been able to get organic pressure. I saw this stat the other day that they're the highest blitz rate right now that they've had at Georgia since Kirby Smart's been there. Ooh. And I believe that one of the reasons is because they're not getting the organic pressure they used to. You got them now. I think they're going out of their way to try to create some of that pressure when they're not necessarily getting that pressure organically. That's something to watch too. They're going to get after Quinn. How do these posing DCs get after the other quarterback? What is the plan there, and how successful are you at that method? If that is the case, that may very well be the determining factor, considering that you just brought up about how talented these O-lines and these tackles are, especially in pass play. I want to say Texas has allowed 6 sacks this year. Georgia has allowed 7. Is that where we are? I think something like that.
Sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah. So they're pretty good. These O-lines are pretty stout. All right, CJ, any closing thoughts before we shut down the preview? Something we may not have mentioned that's on your mind?
No, I mean, you want to have that same game plan as in Oklahoma against a good defense with a more potent offense here. No short fields, end every drive with a kick. And I thought Texas, after the first drive against Oklahoma, did a pretty good job of that, right? The ball wasn't in a position to be turned over. You saw them find success one way or the other in the running game with hustle, with the big play in the passing game to create chunk yardages. You're going to need Quinn to perform better. You're going to need that offensive line to find that running game earlier. With that said, I think that Texas is sitting pretty healthy right now. You got to have Isaiah Bond to come back. He needs to be healthy for this game, and if he is, I like Texas in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That'd just be too many weapons for them to have to allocate resources to stop. He's out there, in addition to if the Texas running game can just find some type of groove like they did versus Oklahoma. I'm with you. I feel really good about this, and I shouldn't, because this is a top 5 team they're playing, and with the end of a dynastic run by Georgia. And yet I don't think I've ever, as a Longhorn fan, felt this confident in
weird,
a game of this magnitude, right? It's weird. I agree. I'm uncomfortable with how confident I am. With Longhorns in this matchup. All right, good stuff there, CJ. Let's thank our sponsor one more time before we end our preview. This episode is brought to you by good friends over at MyBookie. With all the excitement of this season, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all, anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag. Use the promo code ONTexas to get started. They also are celebrating their 10-year anniversary, so they're rolling out the red carpet for bettors everywhere. Bet big and bet confidently with the risk-free Thursdays. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you'll get your money back weekly. No sweat, win-win bets all season long. Sign up right now. Use the code ONTexas to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Double the cash in your account before you even place your first bet. But don't wait, because it's only available for a limited time only. Also, go check out MyBookie Plus for you veterans of MyBookie who've been with them for a while. It's simple. The more you play, the more you earn. As you progress through the tiers, you can unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash back in your account. That's mybookie.ag. Use the code ONTexas or check out MyBookie Plus to unlock some of those great promotions and rewards. All right, CJ, thank you very much for the breakdown. I guess we should give a score prediction before we get out of here officially. I guess is that you want to give a score prediction before we officially end this thing? What you got?
Yeah, why not? Let's see. I've been saying 31-20 all week for Texas. I think it's going to be a little bit more high scoring than that. I think you see 34-27. I still like Texas to win. I like Texas by about a score. 34-27 sounds about right. That might be a lot of points, but hey, we saw that Alabama game open up pretty heavily down the back stretch there.
I'm with you. I feel like Georgia's going to score at least 2 touchdowns, maybe even 3. I got Texas. I kind of like that number you were at. That 31. I'll go below that. I'll go 30. I think Texas gets right at 30. I'll go 30-20, 30-23, 30-23.
I like it.
Touchdown win by Texas. I think Texas gets up early, though, and then Georgia starts fighting back like they've been doing all season long, pretty much. All right. Yes. Thank you, CJ, for the breakdown and the wisdom and the nuggets. Thank you guys out there for watching and listening. Thank you to our good friends over at MyBookie for sponsoring the preview here on Texas football. And thank you to our friends over at On Texas. Remember, join us next week. Hopefully, we're celebrating and talking about another win for the Longhorns. Until next time, hook 'em horns.